we live with that here. What's that?
The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, December 29th. And I am super happy to have Nikos join us from Greece, Athens. I assume Athens.
Somewhere there.
Somewhere in the outskirts of Athens, in the land of Greek philosophy. We wish, right? It would be nice if Greek philosophy had an impact on Greece of today. That would be amazing. But yes, thanks, Nikos, for joining us. I know it's late over there, so I appreciate it.
It's becoming a tradition, right? Last year we had a discussion around this time of the year. It was very cool, so let's make it a thing.
Okay, I didn't know we did it the same time of year. Okay,
yeah,
we'll make it a thing. The interview before New Year's is a Nikos interview. We'll just make that. I'll let Angela know, and we'll just book it in advance. So it's been a busy year. It's been an interesting year. So you kind of specialize intellectually on kind of the far left and the far right of the political ideological spectrum, and it's been an interesting year for you, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been quite busy. So I take people for tours in the Museum of Horror of history, but also of horror of the present. So it's. I think we were among the first people who years ago we noticed something that is happening in the right, that the right is more and more trying to cut ties from classical liberalism. They view the relationship with classical liberalism as a liability, as a problem. And I remember where I was. I was in Loughborough University when I first heard you talk about the alt-right. That was 2015, 2016. Very few people were talking about the alt-right back then. And here we are in 9 years later, and what developed out from the alt-right now has audience of tens of millions of people. So yeah, definitely something is happening there.
Yeah, I mean, I remember during Trump's campaign, that's when the alt-right came out. And then they got emboldened by, I think, Charlottesville. But I think I predicted at the time that they would increase in their influence on the right because there was really no opposition to them on the right.
Yeah, and to give to people some notion of how far it seems from today. You were talking mostly about people like Milo Yiannopoulos, even one remembers him, and Richard Spencer. So the persona of the alt-right back then is Richard Spencer. Of course, if you compare Richard Spencer to the figures that are today in the new right, Richard Spencer, in retrospect, looks like this very serious intellectual compared to what we have today. But yeah, that's where we are.
Say a little bit who Richard Spencer was, because I don't think people remember him. Milo's still around. I just saw him some podcast accusing Nick Fuentes of being, accusing everybody of being, they're all homosexual, but accusing them of all kinds of things, raping little boys. He was accusing all kinds of people of all kinds of stuff, and I think it was Charlie Cook, was a bad guy. He hasn't changed one bit. He's still as nutty, but he's not taken quite as seriously today as he was back.
Yeah, so that alt-right came out, let's say, of the paleo-conservative movement. So Spencer himself, now it's not very fresh in my memory, but he was working in the Taki magazine. Taki magazine was this kind of paleo-conservative stuff. So they were the first people who understood that the climate is very fertile for racial thinking. So they said, look, everyone out there is talking about their identity. Black people are talking about their identity. it's time also for us, for whites, to talk about our identity. And of course, this within a few years, as it was 100% predictable, this became indeed the trend. So, of course, Richard Spencer was still talking the language of, let's say, the old white nationalism, fused a bit with the critical race theory type of language. You know, they talked about the need to be, let's say, protected, the need to be recognized, the need to be viewed, the need to be seen as white people. So it wasn't anymore so much white supremacy, that we are the best and we are the most powerful. It's more white vulnerability, right? That because this was the currency that was working, this was the currency that was selling, that we are in need of protection. Everyone is offered protection. Now it's time for us to be offered protection. Now, he got involved with the tragedy and the debacle in Charlottesville. So soon he was not as relevant. Later he tried to rediscover himself as something else. But it's interesting if you see, for example, today Nick Fuentes, who doesn't even have this, let's say, claim to intellectuality. So if you view, for example, figures of white national like Jared Taylor, you know, they were people who would present yourself, I'm cultured, I aspire to this higher sense of Western civilization and all that stuff. Whereas today, it's more like it appeals to what is the worst in all of us. You know, we are too lazy to get involved with ideas. It's just about, you know, trolling, talk about the last stupid conspiracy theory, just blame the Jews. So even if you go to that corner of that freak show corner of the, however you want to call it, far right, even there you see a rapid drop in, for a lack of a better word, quality of the discourse there.
To what extent have they all become Milo, in a sense? Because Milo
and the
was always
question
like
is,
that, right?
yeah, they've become more like Milo. But the question is, so there's no question Milo was very clever, right? He was one of the first like self-entrepreneurs of the troll era. He made himself as this troll. So when you see someone like Tucker, for example, like, I don't know, I'm interested in your view. Does he believe these things? Or is he too clever and he sees that, oh, this is my audience. The audience, like, I'm going to bring this random guy and said, hey, here's a homeless guy who had sex with Obama and they're going to buy it. So it's a question whether they have dropped their own standards to meet their audience, or they actually believe these things, or there's something else happening. I don't know, money or serious problems in their head. I don't know. What do you think?
I think something. It's hard for me to say about Tucker. I mean, I remember Tucker 15 years ago, 20 years ago. He was a bow tie wearing, kind of libertarian, Heritage Foundation, like the libertarian at Heritage. He was a free market guy at a conservative place. And then he got involved in Fox. And I think the dynamics of appeal, and he got involved with Trump. And I think, look, we can talk about this, but I think Trump's ascent changed everything. I mean, it reoriented everything. I mean, at the end, ideas shape history, but you know, the particulars are determined by the particulars, the particular people. And I think Trump changed everything. And I think Tucker got caught up in in the masses, in the glory of appealing to large audiences. I mean, when he took over his big show on Fox, he took it over from I forget the guy's name. I used to be on his show, but I forget.
Not Hannity.
No, not Hannity. It was a guy from the 2000s who I was on a show and Leonard was on a show. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But he got a large audience, and you could see he slowly shifted. Bill O'Reilly, thank you. Somebody said Bill O'Reilly. He slowly shifted more and more and more to the crazy. And he was constrained by the corporate entity of Fox. And then when he left Fox, he was unconstrained. Now, whether he went crazy, and you know, the fact that he can tell you with a straight face the demons attacked him as bad, and he's got the scratches to prove it and all that, suggests to me that something psychological, something mental has happened to him. Is he also paid by the Qataris? Is he also just cynical and thinks the world is a horrible place and who cares, possibly. So I think he believes some of it, and I think that he is cynical about other stuff.
And you know what? Maybe at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because, okay,
No.
let's say Tucker went crazy. Let's say even Candace Owens went crazy. The
Candace
fact
was
is
never
that they
smart.
have
Tucker was
millions.
smart. Candace
Sorry?
was never smart.
Yeah,
Candace was
true.
never smart. Candace would I mean, she was discovered basically by Charlie Cook, and she would basically repeat Charlie's talking points. So she was very good at whatever she was fed because she was a woman and black. She had her own audience, and she could repeat those things and get it and gain credibility, gain audience. But then as
And
soon as
she
she
could
became
say things
independent,
that no one else could. I remember she was the
yep,
first person who
yep,
said, you know what, George Floyd might not be the hero you think he is. And back then, we were
yep,
like, wow, this is so brave. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what these individuals are because what matters is they have millions of followers. Sometimes
million.
Spotify releases this data and you see which are the most popular podcasts. And quite often they are top 5 or sometimes
Yep,
even the top 3.
yep, yeah. And so they have a massive audience. And you're right. They're non-intellectual, none of them. I mean, they're complete nutcases, right? I mean, and you see the people Tucker brings on. So Tucker is the most mainstream of them, right? And he could have anybody come on his show. Pretty much, anybody would come on his show. And the people he brings on are these, none of them are intellectually of any significance. Even the racist, he could find a good racist. I mean, he could find an intellectual racist, but he doesn't even do that. The people he brings on are at the margins. They're not very smart. They're not able. They come up with the weirdest, stupidest conspiracy theories that are easy to debunk. I mean, it really takes 5 minutes. And what they're preying on is laziness, right? I mean, the laziness of the public and the emotionalism, not even to check, not even to care.
He's a bit, I wonder if he's a bit like this Wynand or even Tuhi character who says, I will serve you anything and you will buy it. Like, I will serve you what was this woman from the Middle East who said, oh yeah, Israel is persecuting Christians. And as you said,
Yes.
it takes 2 minutes of Googling to figure out this is a crazy narrative. But no, you will buy it. I will bring you a homeless person who claims he had gay sex with Obama and you will buy it. It's almost not bullying his audience, but almost, I don't know, it's almost daring his audience. How far can I take it? I'll take it even farther and you will fall for this because this is who you are.
That's a good point. I think maybe that's part of what drives him is this to show how exactly that Tui kind of mentality of to show people how stupid they really are. To make that a point. Yeah, I mean, she was a nun, so she had the credibility of being a nun. But and he followed up. This is the thing about Tucker. So he does something like that. It's debunked, and then he follows it up with like memes saying, "No, Qatar is much friendlier to Christians than Israel is."
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and yeah, that's the thing, and it's interesting as you said. Like it's what we were saying earlier that even in that level of the discussion, even the racist or the white nationalists have become less intellectual. And you mentioned Trump. I think the other big thing that destroyed their mind was COVID, because there was this healthy skepticism that was warranted, and
yep,
you and me were among the first who were in the barricades against the lockdowns.
yep,
So there was this healthy element of, okay, something is happening here, which needs to be resisted when it comes to the state over it. But together they threw any semblance of reason and that, yeah, there are facts. They became full postmodernists after COVID, that anything the powers to be are telling me is a lie. Like the thing my teachers told me about World War II is a lie. So they try to find who is the biggest sacred cow that the powers to be believe. I'm going to believe the opposite. This is how you ended up in a world where now you have millions of young people giving another chance to Hitler, because it's like everything they told me is a lie. So obviously also what they told me about Hitler is a lie. So maybe, there's a point to Hitler.
yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point. So authorities, intellectual authorities are out because they somehow bamboozled us on COVID, and therefore we can't trust them at anything else. I have seen some data. It's really interesting if you look at the data. You know, if you look at who wanted to open up America, who wanted to open up after the lockdowns, it's actually the people, the masses, were anti-lockdown. Were pro-lockdown. And actually, the experts wanted to open up, and it's the people who didn't, on average, right? So and people completely misremember that Tucker was one of the first people to go to Trump and tell him to lock everything down. That it was Bannon panicked. Bannon told Trump to lock down. They can't remember any of this, and I get accused all the time of being pro-lockdowns because I was pro-vaccines. So if you're pro-vaccines, you're automatically pro-lockdown because they can't think in terms of
they can't think in terms of nuance because they can only think in terms of tribes. So
Yep.
Yaron was on the vaccine tribe, therefore obviously he was also in the lockdown tribe. So this is almost I don't remember how a 3-year-old thinks because it's been some time since I was 3-year-old, but they're probably thinking a bit like that. This is like intellectual underdevelopment. Like you retreat back to the thinking of like this is what we say, like tribalism makes you literally stupid. Like tribalism makes your own self worst enemy. Like I wonder how these people manage to drive to work and they don't end up like falling on the sea or something with the way they think.
or don't think.
Or don't think, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm really focused on kind of the right in the U.S. Are you seeing anything different in Europe? The characteristics of the right in the UK and in Europe itself, any different?
So in some way, because in Europe, so let's start from something else. For me, the biggest failure of the right is of the new right is their failure in understanding that we are experiencing a civilizational war when it comes to the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians and radical Islam. So for me, this is the major test they failed. So you would expect that because at least they portray themselves as these defenders of the West, they would understand that the war that took place for the last 2 years was a war for the ages, perhaps the most important war the West has fought since at least the Cold War. And they missed that completely. Now, because in Europe, the threat of radical Islam is a bit more imminent, is a bit more in your face, I was positively surprised by many people in the European right, which otherwise I would expect that they would fall in the same tribalism, the same type of contrarian thinking that, whatever the elites tell me, it's the opposite. So in Europe, the right is a bit more on these specific issues, for example, on Israel, they're a bit better and they haven't completely lost their mind in the way they have lost their mind in the United States. Maybe because the problems again are more imminent, so you cannot afford to completely lose your mind.
I think right now they're more focused on hating the Muslim immigrants than they are on hating Jews in Israel.
Yeah. So you don't see this anti-Semitism, but also they still view themselves as we are here defending the West. They probably don't understand what the West is, but at least they respect this label that is the West. You don't see what you see in the United States, which is a conscious kind of disassociation with this notion of the West. Like you wouldn't see Europeans, of right-wing Europeans, going and saying good things about Qatar, for example. That would be unheard. That would be unheard of. Of course, you have the issue of their relationship. Some of them, their dubious relationship with Russia, or their relationship in terms of not disassociating and not condemning it strong enough. There are also these discussions about money floating around either from Russia or from other governments of similar ideological persuasions in Europe. So they're definitely not perfect, but they're not as bad and not as deranged as the new right in the US.
What about religion? To what extent? I mean, religion plays a huge role on the right in the US, not in any particular thing they say, but in their kind of intellectual backup. It's always in the name of Christianity, everything they do. Does Christianity play a role for the new rights in Europe?
Well, national conservatism in a way first was an institutional thing in Europe before it became an institutional thing in the US. So let's say the Kremlin, to use the Cold War metaphor of national conservatism, was Hungary, the Hungary of Viktor Orban. So it definitely plays a role. But also because in Europe, in some countries, it's not clear which is stronger, Catholicism, Protestantism. It's not so strong yet as the rallying cry. So you don't see it. So you don't have integralists in Europe having as a distinct voice as they do in the US, or at least you don't. I mean, you couldn't say that the AfD in Germany or the Reform Party in the UK, you couldn't say they're integralist. You don't hear voices who say, for example, that we need this soft theocracy, because in my mind, this is what the integralists are in the US. They're basically theocrats in fancy suits.
Yep.
But then again, because these movements in Europe don't have their own ideology, they don't have a very distinct, they know what they're against, woke, Islam and all that stuff, but they don't have an identity of what they are for. I wouldn't be surprised if they're still looking for this identity. And I wouldn't be surprised if Christianity is what actually gives them this identity, because I can tell you for sure, unfortunately, it's not going to be classical liberalism. It's not going to be objectivism. So, yeah, at some point, they will have to end up to some meaning-giving system, and the obvious candidate is Christianity.
Yep. So, the right everywhere seems to, the one thing they all agree on is they've really, as you said, abandoned classical liberalism certainly in the sense of free markets. None of them believe in free markets anymore. I assume that's true, I think, with Reform and Le Pen and AfD.
Yeah, Le Pen is actually even worse than her father. Her father was worse than Le Pen in everything, but at least in economics he was. So Le Pen is more statist even than her father. Her father was Jean-Marie Le Pen, so he was way worse in everything else. Nigel Farage recently, voices in his party have talked about nationalizing some key industries. Just to remind people that 15 years ago, Farage was presenting himself as this kind of libertarian. I remember an anarcho-capitalist podcast interviewing Farage and disagreeing. Well, at what point do we get rid of the state? So this was Farage circa 2011, 2012. And today he's talking about nationalizing key industries. And AfD has different character in different German states. So Germany, it's not so much like a Leninist type of party. So in different localities, it has different character, but it's not, the trajectory is not towards more economic freedom. And this is because for them, freedom is a problem to be mitigated. Not only economic freedom, but also personal freedom. Mm-hmm. So they view you as, so basically say, freedom opens you up to mistakes. It could be you watching porn, or employing immigrants, or moving away from your parents, because remember, you owe respect to your parents, or employing people who are not local, or, God forbid, taking your business and going somewhere else. So whether it is the economic field or the personal field, they view freedom as making you basically a basket case, that you're going to take all the wrong decisions, which is going to ruin your life, because for them a non-Christian, non-virtuous in the Christian way life is a bad life. And you're going to ruin also your community, because you're going to upset it. You're going to upset the norms. So for them, the key thing to be preserved is the norms, tradition, business as usual. We cannot go too fast forward. You cannot go too fast ahead, because then what happens to the organic community? So you cannot be, let's say, a Howard Rourke, to use an example that we will understand, in the worldview of the new right. In the worldview of the new right, we all have to rise together. And we all have to rise together while maintaining society and tradition as it used to be. So this is why freedom is an existential problem for them. It's a problem that has to be managed, that has to be mitigated. Your freedom to do whatever you want with your life, but also, obviously, economic freedom.
And how far do you think these political parties are willing to go on this? I mean, are they willing to are they willing to eliminate political freedom? Is that in their agenda? Are they thinking about it?
No, not in the way that, for example, the fascists did. The fascists were very clear that we are a revolutionary radical movement. We want to do away with parliamentarism and all that stuff.
Yeah.
There is not a single such movement in, at least in Europe, who wants to do these things. But again, at the fact that at least rhetorically they want to maintain the rule of law is quite is a good thing. So that's why I don't like they relate them to fascism. It's not fascism, and it's not. We don't have. It's not a good. It's not a very good parallel. It's a very good parallel in terms of we face similar, let's say, problems, and that they are following the rule book of we have a crisis and we're afraid of the left, and the left is so bad that anything goes. So when it comes to this part, there are similarities with the 1930s, but there's definitely no similarities in them wanting to to follow a revolutionary road of remaking society, because that's what fascism was. Fascism was a revolutionary movement, and of course, I'm not using the term revolutionary in a good
positive
way.
sense.
Yeah.
So when Mussolini takes over, is it clear that his agenda is to dissolve parliament and to do away with those institutions?
Well, he doesn't. In the last month before he takes power, this is not what he says. But Mussolini is a revolutionary when he begins. He begins as a socialist.
Yeah.
He joins forces with revolutionary syndicalists. So basically people who say, we need a new society. We need a society where the state controls everything. Why do we have all these political parties? Why do we have all these disagreements? The nation needs to be this one organic unity. So to anyone paying attention, they should understand that, Mussolini is someone who is a revolutionary, even more with Hitler, because Hitler spelled it all out in Mein Kampf. So yes, you should expect that these people would come to power as radical revolutionary movements. They had their own militias. At some point, the Nazis had militias, like street fighters of hundreds of thousands of people. There's not a single movement in the world today that has such even an ambition of such action. So we're dealing with something which is, at least in Europe, which is not good, but it's not, at least at this point, we're not going to see dark shirts, militias, and taking power through force or whatever, or taking power and then dissolving parliaments and stuff.
Do you think part of it is that, they learned from Orban and from Putin that you can do it in other ways? That is, in a sense, Putin still has elections. He still pretends it's a free country in some sense. Orban certainly does, and maybe the elections in Hungary are legit. It's hard to tell. It seems like the opposition might actually win against Orban in the future. But he's basically dismantled media. He dismantled the independent court system. He's dismantled all of this. He's an authoritarian in kind of a system that still allows elections.
Yeah, the main thing is none of these figures in Europe that come to my mind, I don't think they have the commitment that it takes to be a dictator. For what it's worth, I think the same is with Trump. To be a fascist requires a commitment that these people, particularly definitely Trump. So Trump has the authoritarian instinct, right? But he hasn't got the instinct to commit to coming up with a program, a vision, like this notion of I have this higher image about life, he hasn't got any of these things. And I don't think, does anyone seriously think Farage daydreams of some national rebirth of in any particular way? So interestingly, I think it's more of a threat in the United States, because in the United States, you have more ideologues who are consciously against liberal democracy. I don't think Nigel Farage has any interest in getting rid of liberal democracy. I do know, though, that the national conservatives and the integralists, they have a problem with classical liberalism, to put it this way. Not
So
to mention Bannon and all these people.
Yeah, yes. I mean, Bannon, I think I think in his heart he's an integralist, but he's the marketing guy of the movement, or the, I don't know what he is, the thug. Uh, so let's talk a little bit about the integralists and what their agenda is. I think there's a bit of a difference between the integralists and the national conservatives, and then there's the Christian conservatives, who are who are national conservatives who are explicitly Christian, whereas the national conservatives try to, because it was founded by an Israeli Jew, the national conservative movements, they stay away from religion a little bit, whereas the Christian conservatives, they don't hold back.
So let's put it simply
Yeah.
then, for people not to get confused. So let's say we have three Venn diagrams, right? These Venn diagrams are attached to each other but are separate. The one is the post-liberals. There we could have the figure of Patrick Deneen as the key figure. They explicitly claim that liberalism, as in classical liberalism, has failed. And they think also that capitalism is a problem. So if you read Deneen, he literally quotes Marx. He talks the language of alienation, the language of exploitation. Now, they're different from national conservatives. National conservatives believe that, yes, liberalism has failed, but the vehicle to get beyond liberalism is going to smaller communities, from the family to the tribe to the nation. Whereas the post-liberals, they think it's more of a, I don't know, maybe a universalist project. So they don't think like what is special about the nation or what is special about the family and the tribe. So they disagree on that level, on the level of, do we want, to use another example, socialism is in one country or socialism to, let's say, international socialism. Of course, if you know anything about the communist movement, this was completely a secondary and historically overplayed difference. So at the end of the day, there is not a huge difference between national conservatives and post-liberals. The integralists, as you say, they want to integrate religion with politics. So they want this type of dual power. Again, to use an example from the left. The church has power in some areas. The state, though, there is still a state. So we're not governed by mullahs. So they're not at that point yet. We have dual power. Of course, dual power means that one of the two has to be stronger at the end of the day. And obviously, my fear is that at the end of the day, all decisions will be made on Christian morality. So they want to impose Christian morality on politics. So technically, someone could be a post-liberal and be an atheist, for example. They say, I want a more integrated, quote-unquote, integrated organic community without competition, without the destabilizing effect of the market, but I don't want religion. Whereas someone could be a post-liberal and to believe in that Christianity needs to have a more of a role. So these are smaller differences, but at the end of the day, all of them agreed. Your freedom is a problem that we have to control and that we have to mitigate. Now, what do the different central planners will do in terms of, like, should the shops be open on Sunday? Maybe there shouldn't be divorce. Maybe there shouldn't be pornography. So they would disagree on the specifics.
Yep.
But the essence is your freedom is a problem, and it's time to name freedom and liberalism and capitalism as a problem.
Yep. I mean, one of the advantages I think that do exist in the U.S. is that the Christians can't agree amongst each other, right? Not only is there Catholics and Protestants, but there are a million different types of Protestants, and none of them can actually agree. And they will, if it ever gets to that, they will be, it's just like with Muslims, one of the things that prevents Islam from being more powerful militarily is that they hate each other, Sunnis and Shiites and ISIS and versus Al-Qaeda versus, whatever. They will kill each other easily. And I think among Christians, particularly in the U.S., the divisions are significant and large.
And there's also historical baggage there. For example, it's interesting to see how the earlier KKK, for example, how they deal with the issue of Catholics. Catholics And
Yep.
Protestants, one of them only is part of the real Americans. The other are not real Americans. So yeah, it's not the perfect ground to unite. That's for sure.
It is interesting that the attack, as you said, they've started this attack on freedom, and once you start that, it goes everywhere. So you've got very, very well-known preachers now in the U.S. saying things like, well, the women shouldn't have the vote.
Yeah, and the
And
thing is, if you take your religion seriously and the books and the scripture seriously, you're gonna start seeing all these issues that you'd expect that they're resolved intellectually. That yeah, they come back. I mean, didn't Nick Fuentes also say the same thing? They were having that discussion actually with Tucker, or was it in one of these interviews that he
I
recently
wouldn't be
was? That yeah,
surprised.
yeah.
He does not like women. That is clear. And yeah, so the women shouldn't have the vote. Gay marriage, of course, is out. Anti-gay laws would be reintroduced and things like that.
So
You said something earlier about Howard Rook, which reminded me of the fact that one of the things that these national conservatives in America, at least, and I don't know about Europe, but in America, have made a big deal is architecture, right? I don't know if you've seen this, but all government buildings now have to be done in the traditions of Greece and Rome.
Yeah. Now, okay, so this gives us a good leeway to discuss also why these movements find a lot of appeal. And I will be very honest to you, I follow so many accounts on Twitter that post these, beautiful rural England houses and all that stuff, and I check them out, and then I go to Airbnb and like, oh, I want to book a house there. This is so beautiful, so idyllic. There is some power and political power even in this notion of beauty that they say we aspire at least to something which is outside of the mundane. And I know you have your views on aesthetics, and they are very well thought, and I won't even get in a discussion on that. But at least they aspire to tell people there is a vision where your life, there could be beauty in your life. And there is a void there in the rest of the political spectrum. So I totally understand how they can attract people through their at least pretense of caring about beauty and about some higher meaning in life. Of course, eventually they find this meaning only in sacrifice, that you have to live for something bigger than yourself. But still, there is some meaning there. And the realm of meaning has been completely abandoned by, let's say, the good guys. Or at best, they give a similar message of, effective altruism. Yeah, maybe we should, like, our goal in life should be to be better altruists. So this is why they found such a fertile ground, because they talk about, you should have this fire inside you about something. Now, they can't tell you exactly what this something is, but at least they understand that people have a yearning for this.
Well,
something
and
for this fire.
art is super important, right? So, certainly the bad guys have always understood this. The Catholic Church understood it. It's why they hired Michelangelo and Raphael and all these guys to decorate their churches, and Bach to write the music and all of that. They knew that art is power. And the communists and the Nazis understood this. And while
100%.
their art was not very good, they understood the symbolism that it represented, the inspiration it could provide, and they certainly, hated, the Nazis in particular hated the kind of decadence of what they called the decadent modern arts. And in most cases, I agree with them in terms of how bad the stuff that was going on in the Weimar Republic was. But yes, the problem. I think at least the church in the Renaissance had taste. I don't think these people have taste. I think they what resonates with them is the fact that it's old. What resonates with them is the fact that it's traditional, and beauty is not at the top of mind. There is a question of you know, what should government buildings look like? You know, you certainly don't want them to be brutalist and kind of ugly 1960s modern. But if anybody wants to see beautiful kind of big buildings or even government buildings, Frank Lloyd Wright has some good examples. So,
And speaking about beauty, let's remember for a second what a privilege it is for us objectivists. I mean, we're not a political movement, but we have this perfect example of beauty, aspiration to something great, and which is the art of Ayn Rand. And what a shame that classical liberals and all these people completely snob that and completely miss how people have this need for the heroic, for the beautiful, for the higher. Not higher in terms of, you know, other life or live for something bigger than yourself, but make your life something important, make your life something heroic, make your life something which is, there's a fire in it, not just this, GDP and just,
but this is the problem with so many of the classical liberals are inspired by people like Hume. So they're skeptics. And if you're a skeptic, it's very hard to get excited about heroism and beauty. And yeah, it's beautiful for you. It's not beautiful for me. It's, what does it mean to be a hero? But they're all skeptics. I mean, Hayek, of course, is. And then if you look at, I remember sitting next to one of the founders of Adam Smith Institute years at a Montpelier dinner, and we were having this thing, and he said, I have 95% confidence that I'm holding a fork right now. He couldn't even agree to say there's certainty about the fact that this is a fork. I mean, that's.
But now that you said this, I just thought of something, right? So at the end of the day, these people don't mean the Adam Smith, I mean the new right.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they don't stand for something positive. They stand for negatives. Like they stand at the end of, like I'm not convinced that Nick Fuentes wants to see the resurrection of the West or something. So notice how this at the end of the day will lead to a nihilism, even when it comes to a nihilism in the form of art and beauty, for example. So notice you did something else that you spotted early on. You were talking about Bronze Age pervert and Bronze Age mindset when no one else was understanding what's happening there. And this was, again, there was something there which was, aspire to some ideal, even if it was, whether it was a good or a bad ideal is a different discussion. Yeah. But today, even this is out of the question, right? So particularly the Groyper movement, they don't even aspire to this, let's say, the aesthetics of the body or the aesthetics of, conquering something. It's just this negative, this kind of nihilistic, trolling, attacking, destroying, not building, but just destroying. So it's a race to the bottom at the end of the day.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, Bronze Age pervert at least demanded that you go exercise, right? So that you do something, right? And that you have a standard of beauty, whether it's a good standard, it's a bad standard, but whatever. Nick Fuentes doesn't require you to do anything.
Yeah,
it's like you can sit in your mother's basement and play video games all day, and you can be a groyper, and you're completely legit. You can never have sex, which he's proud of the fact that he's never had sex, and that's cool. That's a good thing. That's a positive, right?
Well, now he has rationalized it, of course, that no, it's not. It's because the Catholic Church says so. So this is his latest rediscovery in this area.
Yeah, but he's giving the incels and men going their own way, or whatever you want to call it, that he's giving them legitimacy in a sense of, women are horrible. You shouldn't have anything to do with them. And yeah, the Catholic Church also doesn't allow me, but there's no positive action these kids need to do except go harass speakers in talks.
Yeah, and even there with the women, right? So at least the MGTOWs, and the whole red pill, the idea was, I'll give you a way to understand women and then use them. You could say, okay, that's sexist, whatever, but there's at least the aspiration of you're going to achieve something. Now it's not even that. Like, don't even bother. Actually, this maybe is the motto of the Groypers. Don't even bother. Don't even bother in anything.
Yep. Yeah. So, any sense of kind of how this plays out politically? I mean, in the US, we have J.D. Vance. It really does look like the right is going to make real progress in Europe, whereas I'm not sure in the US. I think Trump is, in a sense, blown it for them. If not for tariffs, Trump would probably be quite popular today. The economy would be booming, and he'd be doing quite well. But I think his attitude, everything about him, is unappealing, and it's going to be difficult for the right to capitalize. Whereas in Europe, there are really no options, it looks like right now.
Yeah, so I don't know how it works with the markets and how you can bet money, but my political betting would be at some point in Europe, in all the major countries, some form of a new right, however you want to call it, will be victorious. And the reason is, of course, the issue of, not just the issue of radical Islam, because as you said in an episode not so long ago, this is a problem that can be solved if there is a political and moral will. But the fact that everyone else is so unwilling to even deal with it. So, for example, if you see what happens these days in the United Kingdom and how the government is treating radical Islam with and the preachers of hate of radical Islam, it is just an issue of time when.
So what are they doing? Tell us a little bit about what the British government is doing with the preachers of radical Islam. Because
you saw that they brought back this guy. They brought this Egyptian activist as he was portrayed, and it's like, oh yeah, this guy. It's such a victory that he was repatriated. Someone who was making comments that would land any British person if he made these comments about Islam in prison. So the things that you hear about the UK, that people go to prison for tweets.
Yeah.
I mean, for months, I didn't pay much attention because I thought, okay, that can't be. Yeah. But turns out it is. And notice that this happens with legislation that the Tories, which is, let's say, the respectable right, they were in power from 2010. So let's say they were in power for more than a decade. Yep. And they did nothing to repeal this legislation. They did nothing to culturally fight against for free speech, but also against radical Islam. And of course, when the more reasonable people, so to speak, don't deal with the problem, then you leave the field open for the AfD in Germany or for the Le Pen in France. So yeah, I predict that at some point this new right in Europe will have its day. They're not going to do much because they don't have any real plan on what to do. But
I was going to say, will they do anything with Islam?
I don't know. I mean, have you read a book by Michel Houellebecq, the weird French author, called Submission?
Oh, yeah. I did a show on it. I did a whole show on Submission a long time ago.
Excellent. So anyone who reads Submission carefully, they will understand that the big revelation in the book is not that Islam is going to win. The big revelation is Islam is going to win, and most of the conservatives in Europe are going to be okay with it because they will view this as a power of order, as a power of conserving whatever it is to be.
For the kind of reasons that Tucker Carlson mentions, that he likes Islam. He says, they're anti-abortion, they don't like gays. We share more with the Qataris than we do with the Israelis.
Exactly.
In Israel, abortions, in Qatar, there are no abortions.
And the moment of truth for me, that when I said, okay, Houellebecq got it right, was when Andrew Tate converted to Islam. I was like, wow, this is it. This is someone who tells you, I find my truth of the things that I stand for in Islam. I can have many women and they will know their place and no woke and all that stuff. So it's Houellebecq was onto something.
Yep. Yeah. Scary. I interrupted you. Would they do anything? So based on Houellebecq, maybe not.
But I mean, what are they going to do? They're going
and they can't do anything economically because they don't believe in anything economically. They can't. So it's going to be interesting what happens after them. Where do we go after them?
I have zero idea. I don't know. I don't know what to, I mean, there can always be positive surprises. I mean, who saw Millet coming 5 years ago? But this is more like a black swan event, not something that was the result of systematic work in preparing the ground.
No, I think it's a combination of things going really bad and his unique personality.
Yeah.
It's a fluke. Even though all the other elections in South America are going to the right, they're not going to anybody like Millet. They're going to
they're not. Millet is and by process of elimination, by the way, I think he is the best state leader in peacetime that I've seen in the Western world, at least in my time, and I would put him above Thatcher and above Reagan. So no one expect that we would experience this 5 years ago, and yet it happened. But yeah, another trend very quickly that I think is very promising in terms of being able to win. It's going to be horrible. Is the populist left? So imagine someone who will see where the wind goes. They will understand that woke is dead. They will understand that, don't talk too much about immigration, don't talk too much about the environment, but let's attack the 1%. Let's attack Israel. Let's let's see what worked in MAGA. Let's put to it a left-wing kind of uniform. So the New York Times will be with us. Trump voters will be with us. The students who hate Israel will be with us. This is a recipe for success for them and distraction for the country and for us.
I think it's right. And at that point, there's no difference between left and right, and they can unite around a banner of hatred and seize control. Yes, I think that's where we're heading. You still need a positive element to sustain authoritarianism, real authoritarianism. You need a positive element. And as Leonard has said, in the US, it seems like religion is the positive element.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is in Europe. I used to think it might be environmentalism, but that has lost a lot of its appeal because of climate change and energy. So the question is, what can they unite Europeans around? And I'm not sure that's positive. Nationalism, maybe. But the EU project is too big, so I don't think it really. I mean, even these right-wing parties are not talking about doing a Brexit.
They're not talking about doing a Brexit. And of course, there is a history in Europe where the far right is in favor of a European integration. At least in its, like Oswald Mosley, when he saw that fascism fell, he was talking about the united Europe. Most neo-fascist and the new right, the old new right in the neo-fascist, let's say, Europe in Greece, they were talking about European integration because the idea was we are a common civilization, a common culture and all that stuff.
Yep.
Common blood, common ethnic roots, race and all that stuff.
All right. Other than Millet, anything positive in the world out there?
Other than Millet, any positive in the world? Well, not in politics. Maybe, I know you have many viewers who like sports, so we can view positive stuff there, but not in politics.
Celtics are playing pretty well, so I'll take it without the number one player, so not bad.
Well, it's not. This is a season. It shouldn't be even in the books.
No. All right, let's see. We've got a bunch of questions. Let's go to the questions. And guys, feel free to keep asking.
Let's nerd it out. Any question you have, far right, far left, fascism, communist, Stalin, Mussolini, we're here for this.
So let me ask you this. So are you seeing, I mean, we know in France there's a populist left. It's quite substantial. Are you seeing a populist left? There's nothing in England. I mean, this Labour Party's, is going to be blown. There's nothing. Are you seeing a populist left in Germany, elsewhere around Europe?
Well, not particularly, because they don't have this. The role of personality is important, right? So if they've lost the populist instinct. The left. So because they were so complacent and comfortable in this, controlling the institutions, talking down to people, how dare you not recycle, how dare you being left, how dare you being racist. They've lost this kind of emotional appeal to the masses. So it will take them some time to regain this, or they will find a charismatic person who will do it. But it's nowhere there in the horizon. I mean, in the UK, it's mostly now these days the Green Party, which is so in bed with everything bad in Islamism that I don't think it has any major appeal potential.
Yeah, my guess is you're going to have to see the right play things out before the left has a rebound.
Yeah.
So here's a piece of good news before we go to the questions. I don't know if you've been seeing this, but it's just happening over the last 2 days. You're seeing mass demonstrations in Iran. I mean,
I've been seeing this, but I've seen this so many times in the past. So, the thing I post on Twitter every time when I see something like this, the day the regime of the mullahs collapses will be humanity's most important day since 8th of May 1945. It will be a day for the ages, a day to celebrate. We should remember it as the day the Berlin Wall fell. And even more important, because towards the end, no one was seriously believing in communism.
Yep.
Whereas radical Islam is a vibrant and dangerous movement. So the day the mullahs fall is going to be more important than the day of the Berlin Wall fall.
It's huge. This could be different. I'm just gonna say it could be different, partially because they're shutting down the markets.
Mm-hmm.
So this is more like 2009. I think there was some demonstrations around. If you combine the shutting down the markets with the Girls' Revolution or the general people are just pissed off at the regime, and so this is driven partially by economics, which is good because the Iranians take that seriously. Partially by a willingness to be free, and at least it looks like this the Shah, the son of the Shah, is actively engaged in. So there seems to be an opposition, right? It seems to be somewhat organized. When in the past the people went out the streets because there was no leadership.
Yeah.
Now there seems maybe there's leadership. Maybe he's been organizing that leadership since the war, the 12-day war. Because if this happens, Israel needs to get credit for it happening. And it could be that he has been organizing something internally since then.
Although with the Shah, because he has a very good PR mechanism in social media, and I'm not saying this negatively, but it's difficult to know how, and most of these people are outside of Iran. So most of the people who post about the Shah or the flag, with the lion, they're outside Iran. So I don't think we don't know how much he has inside Iran. By the way, let me say that one of my strongest memory of 2025 is following you early in the morning of the day of the beginning of the 12-day war. So Yaron monitoring the situation was one of my strongest 2025 public affairs memories.
I appreciate that. I can't remember it, but that's okay. It all is a blur. It seems, I mean, again, I don't want to be too optimistic because yes, we've been disappointed many, many times, but it does seem like some of the chants that people are recording and putting up videos mention the Shah. And again, the whole thing started with the closing of the markets, and that's huge because the 79 revolution really became a revolution when the markets were closed, when the kind of the what they call the middle class, it's pretty poor middle class, but when the middle class got engaged, when the merchants got engaged, that's when it really accelerated. So,
and also when the police of the then regime decided it's not worth going for a bloodshed, which is exactly what happened also in East Germany. And
it does look like nobody's been shot yet, or at least we're not getting reports of people being shot in any significant way. So anyway, maybe that's not true. That sounds of people running. So we're looking for positives, and maybe something's happening in Iran. We'll keep an eye on it and see what happens. It would be a great way to start 2026 if it happened. All right, let's see. Who do we have here? All right, questions coming in. Let's start with James, $50. Thank you, James. Interesting how social policies manifest themselves in cities like San Francisco, which allow tons of innovation and high salaries, while simultaneously flooding its streets with homeless. Are we in an age of symbolic socialism rather than actual socialism?
Okay, that's a very interesting question because it has to do with who, like, if you ask a leftist, are these people better off being left at the street, or would they be better off? Let's say I'm making this up. Okay, you gather them and you put them, let's say, in a park. They have food. They have rehabilitation programs. 9 out of 10 leftists would say, no, 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 that would be like the equivalent of the Nazis, concentration camps, and all that stuff. And then you start wondering, do they actually want to see the cities dirty? And is this like envy? Like, if I cannot live in a great neighborhood, neither can you. But then you realize that their own neighborhoods turn out like that. So I don't know. I've been struggling. I've been grappling with these thoughts. Why are the leftists okay with this? But I haven't got an answer. So what about you?
Well, I mean, I think it's the modern left is not a socialist like the old left. It's not a left that believes that the state should own the means of production and should solve every individual's problems from the top. It's much more nihilistic left that basically sees, is quite happy to leave people to shoot up drugs and to be homeless and to defecate in the streets. Who are we to tell them what to do? Kind of pseudo freedom. It's a pretense of freedom, and it's why they're not going to nationalize Silicon Valley, right? Because that's part of the question: is why aren't they going after? Because they realize, again, they're not ideologically socialist. They're not ideological Marxists. They realize there's a goose that's laying a golden egg here. Why not exploit this? Plus, it's kind of cool. They kind of all think it's cool, right? And many of the worst leftists in San Francisco are in Silicon Valley and work at Silicon Valley and work for these companies. They realize that there's value there. So it's this, again, it's a little like the right. There's no ideology there. It's not like the ideologues. And then they see it's really ruining the neighborhoods. They vote the bastards out. They vote other people in. We're not really going to clean it up completely, but they're going to give you the pretense of things a little bit better, and then it'll swing back after a while. So there are no ideas here. It's just emotional responses. But there is this perception, I think you're right, of we're not going to organize things. We're not going to round people up. We're not going to nationalize businesses. We're going to regulate. What we'll tax them. We want a billionaire's tax. That's the big thing in California now, is a billionaire's tax. We want a billionaire's tax, but we don't want them to leave, and we don't want to nationalize them. We want to milk them for everything that they've got.
And most of them would agree with being milked.
And it is interesting how many of them are becoming rightists. So, I mean, I think the most interesting character here is the CEO of Salesforce, whose name escapes me right now. Salesforce is a huge company in Silicon Valley. It has this magnificent tower in downtown San Francisco. It's a Salesforce building. And the CEO of Salesforce was an avid leftist, right? A real committed leftist, environmentalism and help the homeless and everything, all the stuff. Mark Benioff is his name. And over the last year, he's suddenly become pals with Donald Trump. He's on the bandwagon of kind of the new right and all this stuff, because it all appeals to kind of, even though he is a producer, right? He built this company. He's the founder. He's not just the CEO. He's the founder of the company. The whatever element of kind of nihilistic, I don't know what it is, that they have, some days the left appeals to and some days the right appeals to. They'll go where it takes them.
Or it's even this Nietzschean thing, either I'm going to be a sucker or I'm going to rule. This is like, I'm going to be the central planner rather than going to be the subject of central planning.
Absolutely. And you combine that with people who think they're smarter than everybody else already, and they probably are, right?
Yeah.
They are smarter than everybody else. And they built big companies. They've done central planning, right? They've done central planning on a large scale. And why can't I take my success at Salesforce and my success at Google and my success
Palantir.
anywhere and just apply it to the state? What's the difference? They can't see the difference. It's economic power and political power. The differentiation between those, it's like only objectivists see that. It's amazing how few people. It's why monopolies. Oh no, this company has force. It's forcing people to buy their product. What do you mean? So they think they're philosopher kings, and they think
Yep.
they can go out there and rule. James, thank you. Wes, also $50. Thank you, Wes. Random question. Nikos, do you read fiction? Any
Yes, I
favorite
read fiction.
genres or authors?
Yeah, so I go through phases. So at some point, I read everything from Houellebecq. I read a lot of Agatha Christie. We have this game with my girlfriend. We try to figure out who the murderer is as early as possible. In the last novel, I think I found the murderer at 6%. She has finished it. I haven't. So I don't know if I'm right. But mostly because when I prepare a new project, I want to get completely immersed in it. So currently I'm working on a new course for the ARI Live courses on the history of the far right. So I try to read historic fiction on Nazism, on fascist Italy. I'm reading a book called The Son of the Century about Mussolini, which is also a TV series. I haven't watched the TV series. So these days, for the last actually many months, I mostly read historic fiction that has to do with anything that has to do with fascism and the Nazis. Now,
Anything?
currently, I'm reading a book which on an alternative history where Oswald Mosley, when the UK is in peace terms with Hitler and Oswald Mosley is becoming the most popular
Interesting.
person in the country. And by the way, talk about people being economically literate. The author thinks that when fascist takes over, they're going to be all about free trade and kind of more power to corporations. So even in alternative reality, we cannot get rid of the economic ignorance of the left.
Yeah. Is any of the books historical fiction that you're reading, would you recommend
I would
in particular?
recommend I would recommend The Son of the Century. The Son of the Century is not historical fiction. It's something between fiction and actual history. And I would definitely recommend it. It's too much detail though. So it goes month by month on how fascists
Oh,
came to
wow.
power. But you will get one main lesson from that, which applies to leftists today. Be careful when you think violence is cool because there's always going to be someone out there more violent than you. So this is what the leftists did in Italy. They were, oh yeah, we're going to occupy factories, we're going to thug people around, not realizing that the other side has veterans of the special forces of the Italian army in the First World War. So maybe it's not a good idea to fight it out with them on a muscle level.
So say something about your course for ARI Live and how people can find out more information
Oh
about it.
yeah, yeah. So the course name is Reactionary Authoritarianism from Mussolini to the New Right. So we cover everything from fascism in Italy, Nazism in Germany, World War II, the intellectuals and fascism, neo-fascism. And then we have also some weeks about the United States, the history of the authoritarian right in the United States, and obviously today the MAGA right and the New Right. People can go to ARI Live courses and you will find it there. Reactionary Authoritarianism from Mussolini to the New Right. You can't miss it because the thumbnail is Mussolini and Hitler, so I'm sure you're going to be able to recognize it.
So
And
if
do
you
you
go
want to
to,
give your discount code or my
yeah, so
discount
if you go
code?
to aynrand.org/start here, there'll be a link there for all the courses and you can find them. And then if you want a discount as a Yaron Brook Show listener, you can get a 10% discount. It's 26YBS10. 26YBS10, aynrand.org/start here. So I'm reading this book. I wonder if you've read it. You probably have. Um, I'm reading it because somebody's paying me to do a review of it. Um, it's Ride the Tiger by Evola.
I've got it over there. So my view of Evola is this guy's clearly a hippie. Like the fact that this guy's in the far, this guy could very easily be in Woodstock smoking weed. It's I don't know how life got him to be like the most he's been characterized the most right-wing thinker in history. But the guy's actually a hippie. It's like primacy of consciousness in steroids.
Yeah. So have you read that book?
Of course, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I mean, he's the Eastern mystic, just like the hippies were, right? It's all about George Harrison smoking dope, smoking, taking drugs, and trans something, experiences. He and Sam Harris would get along. Uh,
No,
Sam
well,
Harris was way too
but
rational.
here's
Sam
something
Harris
else
was way
interesting
too
about
rational.
Evola. He considers after the war the biggest danger not communism but America. Why? Because he understands that America stands for the United States, stand for you living your life for yourself, using your mind, and this for Evola, this is the thing he cannot stand. He's okay. He would rather you lived in gulags rather than you becoming a Hank Rearden and living your life for yourself and your own happiness and building nice things for the stuff. So anyone who likes these people, like, just keep this in mind. If you consider yourself still a capitalist, keep in mind that these people would rather have communism than anything related to laissez-faire capitalism.
And another thing I noticed, I've read about half the book, and he's talking about the nature of man and critique of Nietzsche and all this stuff. One word never appears in the book. There's no mention of it, and that's reason. There's just human reason doesn't exist. Irrationality reason is just
Yeah.
he doesn't recognize the phenomena.
And if people are generous with their money and you're generous with your time, you should also read his most famous book, A Revolt Against the Modern World, where he actually specifically claims that reality is reality and the mind. These are bad things, very, very bad things. This is where all the problems began.
Yep. No, I'm not going to read any more of it.
Yeah, that's
I
the other
mean,
thing. He's not like Nietzsche is a brilliant writer. Evola I don't understand how he has such an appeal.
following, yeah. I'm much more interested in history than in delving into these nasty ideas. So I'd rather go back to reading my history books.
At least he wasn't. I was about to say at least he wasn't as bad as the Nazis, but probably his problem was the Nazis were not idealist enough. So anyway,
Yeah. Yep. All right. Ian Mirkat says, your people off Jesus and yours. Oh, your people, me, off Jesus and yours off Socrates. Why should I listen to either one of you? Thank you, Mirkat. We needed that. He also says, was great listening to you in Tel Aviv, Nikos. I can see the back. I can see the back of my head in the recording. P.S. Gaza must go. Must be destroyed. He always has this P.S. in all his.
Well, yeah, I don't think that's the way to win hearts and minds. But anyway, thanks for the
He's
comments
not
and
trying.
thanks for being in Tel Aviv. As I was telling to Yaron, I think before we went live, that event in Israel and the trip to Israel, we went to the Ground Zero of October 7, was the most meaningful professional experience of my life.
So say a little bit about why.
Well, why? It's so how all these intellectuals in the 30s, they would go to the Spanish Civil War, and for them, this was the most important civilization battle of the time. It was like fascism against democracy. Now, they didn't have a proper conceptualization of it, but I could understand that they felt that they were part of something historical. And this is how I felt traveling to Israel in the aftermath of that war, that I experienced ground zero of a civilizational war, of an existential war. You have the West, you have like the forward outpost of the West versus the combined forces of radical Islam. So I felt I was part of an important moment in the history of the West.
And I understood you got a tour of the grounds where the slaughter happened on October 7th.
Oh yeah. We went to the ground zero of Nova Festival, to where we have collected the car records. It was an experience. It was an experience, as you can imagine.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, and one very interesting moment. So, it's very often in objectivism we talk about the importance of concretizing an abstraction. So we were in this hill overlooking Gaza, and actually an objectivist from the group, he showed me an electric wire, an electric, let's say, installation that went from Israel towards Gaza, and he said, this is how we give them electricity. This is how we were giving them electricity throughout the war. And I thought, wow, right? It's one thing to talk about, altruism and the morality of self-sacrifice, and it's another thing seeing it literally over there.
It is so infuriating. Yep. All right, Andrew, he says, I think the new right, collectivist, fascist media personalities are self-defeating. They're so irrational that Americans will reject their dumb theories. They don't really spread ideas. They spread specious theories, thoughts.
Well, did fascism actually spread ideas? Fascism was more of a vibe than it was an ideology. It was more of an aesthetic experience. It was based on this idea of a theorist called Sorel, of the myth. The myth is like a meme. You kind of get what it is about, glory, all that stuff, but it can't be explained. So it won't be the first time that an ideology that is not that cannot be rationally explained, so to speak, gains traction. Now, it's not as appealing as fascism, because fascism had a positive promise about the future. These people here, again, they don't even bother to give you this positive vision. So I hope our friend is onto something, and maybe people will see through the BS.
I mean, think about how they're softening the culture, though, right? So, I remember in 2016, I did a show on the alt-right, and then I got all this anti-Semitic stuff in my inbox. And it lasted for a few days, and then it disappeared. And it was swastikas, and it was pretty, gross, but it was quick and went away. And, it was weird. It was completely, and now I get the anti-Semitic stuff every day on a regular basis, much more sophisticated. I mean, still gross, but much more sophisticated. I don't get swastikas anymore. They're not like that, but it's just this subtle anti-Semitism. And some of it does, they do say to the gas chambers, go, basically, but it's now everywhere online. It's like, and we've seen it's been normalized. So yeah, I mean, the bulk of the American people are not anti-Semitic. The bulk of the American people are not quite there yet. But who would have thought 10 years ago that millions would be? Because millions are, right? And then what's the next thing to be, do we get desensitized to, right? What's the next big thing we get desensitized to? And, J.D. Vance might lose if he runs next time, but then the left will, there'll be a Democratic president. He'll screw things up. And then somebody like J.D. Vance will come, maybe more charisma than J.D., and say, look, you gave the left a chance, but we've got to complete the Trump revolution, or whatever it is that they think they're doing, and rally the forces. So I don't think it works quite that way. It's usually disgusting. I mean, Hitler was this little obnoxious, horrible, how did Hitler become charismatic, right? I mean, he was like a little Nick Fuentes. What was he? What was he yelling? Was he yelling intellectual, deep ideas? No, he was yelling exactly what Nick Fuentes is yelling. Actually,
Nick Fuentes is more has something that Hitler didn't have. Nick Fuentes can be funny. Hitler
Yes.
never was that. Hitler was a better orator than Nick Fuentes, but
also in the sense
there's
of
no way he
manipulating his
was.
audience. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way someone could have predicted. Oh, yeah, this guy's obviously, he's gonna win, and yet it happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we can't do. I think what we can't do is say, "Oh no, these people are not serious. They're never going to win. Let's ignore them." No, I mean, this is the enemy, and they have to be dealt with. They have to be confronted. I don't know if we can, if we have an impact, but we certainly need to try. We certainly need to.
Yeah, and most importantly, they don't have a positive vision. This is our strongest weapon. This is the tool that we have. That people, I think, at the end of the day, most people would want to see something. Most people are not. Their vision of life is not the vision of the Groypers. Like they have moments where they thrive for something better, and they're very thirsty for this, and no one offers it these days.
Yep. Steph says, Ayn Rand taught me how to properly value my life, achievement, relationship, love, and art. I moved from nihilistic metal music to romantic classical. What was your moment of awakening to Ayn Rand's aesthetic and sense of life?
Me or you?
I think you're the guest.
Well, the sense of life and the romantic and all that stuff. So this was there already from communism. So I used to love Shostakovich. I still love Shostakovich. I used to love the cinema of Eisenstein. I still like the cinema of Eisenstein. I mean, out of context, obviously, I don't like it because I want the Bolshevik party to triumph. But I mean, let me give this challenge to people. Go and watch in Eisenstein's October the scene where Lenin arrives in the Petrograd station. And I mean, it's impossible not to realize that this is something, this is like an artistic vision of something brilliant. And you can enjoy this quote unquote out of context. And actually, I was surprised. So when I found out which music Ayn Rand had in her mind when she wrote Halle's Concerto, I was expecting something much closer to Shostakovich or something much closer to maybe Tchaikovsky, the 1812 Overture, rather than the thing by by what's the name of that guy who she based it. So it's very personal.
Rachmaninoff, right?
Sorry?
It's Rachmaninoff.
No, it's not Rachmaninoff. The Rachmaninoff was one of her favorite ones, but they say that it's the other one by Mussorgsky, which I'm not sure. I'm sure someone from the
Pictures
audience
an exhibition?
What?
Pictures and an exhibition by Mussorgsky?
I think. I'm not sure. But I was very surprised. It was very much like low-key, low energy compared to what I had and what I was expecting.
I've always thought it was Rachmaninoff. And
Rachmaninoff is mentioned in the Fountain when it says it's the first notes, but
yes,
that's
but I thought
not
Haley was Rachmaninoff. And Tchaikovsky's mentioned somewhere. Tchaikovsky's
yes,
piano
it's
concerto.
mentioned again in the Fountainhead. But anyway, what I mean is, how you envision like this aesthetic vision is very personal, and it has to do with what are your experiences with art. So, for example, the strongest artistic reaction I ever had to something, and Yaron will think I'm a complete Philistine, was when I recently rewatched Interstellar in IMAX. So, because this is what got me into, I don't know, radical politics or whatever. It was this vision of, of humanity triumphing and conquering and overcoming and all that stuff. So this is something that it had more effect on me than anything else that I have. This vision that, we can overcome everything, and literally sky is the limit.
Yeah, I mean that is an amazingly positive aspect of Interstellar. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was going to say that I guess I should give Shostakovich another shot, because I've never liked Shostakovich.
Listen to Leningrad Symphony, but listen to it from the version of the Soviet version from the 50s. Like I don't want to sanction, I know Ayn Rand even was thinking of whether she should buy discs from Soviet Union, but I think their understanding of the piece is better than how it's reproduced lately, which is way less glorious.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that my awakening to Rand's aesthetics and sense of life happened in two stages. First, it was reading her novels. I was young, so I was much younger than Nikos. I didn't have an aesthetic. I didn't have much of an aesthetic understanding before that, right? It was pop music, and I read a lot. So I read a lot of, but popular fiction, and I like a lot of bizarre European movies, and so I didn't have much of an aesthetic background. Painting, my parents had all modern art in our house. So it was that. And then phase two was the first time I met other objectivists in Israel. Literally the first meeting we had, we were sitting around and talking. First time I thought I was the only objectivist on the planet, basically. And they asked me if I knew anything about classical music, and I said no. And he put on, I think it's the second movement of Tchaikovsky's second piano concerto, or maybe I think it's the second. And it just blew me away. And they sat quietly listening to the music, right? There was like maybe 5, 6, 7 people there, and everybody just sat quietly listening to the music, like taking it seriously. Like this is something you should do. You shouldn't this is not background. This is an experience. And that blew me away. And then I became a huge fan of classical music, and then learned about other art forms. And so that was when it really took off for me, qua aesthetics. And the objectivist group in Israel at the time, we spent more time probably on aesthetics than anything else. We watched movies together. We saw slideshows of art. We listened to music together. We did all this stuff together. We'd go to Cinematheque regularly to watch movies. So it was very organized around aesthetics.
So since one last thing, since our friend looks like he expects a particular moment. So 2015, I was working a crappy job as a teaching assistant. I was traveling a lot because I was doing outreach in my university. And I remember traveling in a bus in some horrible industrial towns in Kent, listening to the early version of Yaron Brook. So you had something on Sinatra. It was an episode, so part of the episode was how crappy California regulations were, and the other half was Sinatra. And I remember being in this kind of decadent post-industrial environment and listening about, Sinatra. And I still remember the feeling that, like, oh, okay, so art is also about what life could be, and you can be in a crappy place, but travel, even without listening to the music. But I was listening to you talking about Sinatra. So this is a moment I remember. It was one of these I remember where I was moments.
2015. Wow.
Yeah.
Again, I have a vague recollection that maybe I did something like that, but I'm glad
you absolutely did, trust me.
I'm glad I had an impact. All right, Andrew, can I get Yaron and Nikos' take on this? In trying to override altruism with egoism, one must change the essential action concept one denotes with morality by marginalizing the term helping and idealizing creating.
You go first.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think that's true. I mean, there's a sense in which it's like what Aristotle talks about is how do you achieve a golden mean? You achieve it by going a little beyond, right? And then you kind of orient around the mean, but you have to experience it. And I definitely think that altruism conditions you around helping and around feeling guilty if you don't help. And it really has you that's the whole orientation in dealing with other people is their well-being, not yours. And there certainly needs to be a correction to that. And while helping is not a bad thing, it might be that for a while you have to not help even when you would help otherwise, because you have to get rid of that urge, that altruistic urge to place the well-being of somebody else above your own. And I think, creating is part of it. There's probably more that you could say about than creating, but the whole focus on self and doing your own thing and making an effort to figure out what your own thing is and what actually brings you pleasure and satisfaction and happiness and all of that, really devoting time to that is something you need to do early on, I think, again, to reorient your focus to yourself versus the other. So yes, I
Right.
think there's a lot to that.
Yeah, I'm obviously you have a better answer. I will just say this is that when it comes to issues that have to do with psychology, your own psychology, you cannot just say from one day to the next, oh, now I realize that altruism is bad, so from today my life changes. Actually, it would take many, many years. So let me give an example. Okay, let's say you live your whole life living in a culture of altruism, and also having the character trait of being, let's say, a people's pleaser. I don't know what's the official term, but you get what I mean.
Yep.
And one day you come across Ayn Rand, okay, and slowly you realize, okay, altruism is poison and rational selfishness, way to go. You fool yourself if you think that you're gonna change in your personal life just because you made the philosophical realization that rational selfishness is good. Obviously, now you have, let's say, a lighthouse to look forward. You have a point of reference, but still, it's so difficult to get rid of personal and psychological baggage. So these identifications are good, but they're just the beginning of a journey.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Liam, if both parties are explicit socialists, what political force is left to defend individual rights? Or is it in the courts?
Well, in the court, someone puts these courts at play. So at the end of the day, if you've lost completely the battle of ideas, nothing can save you, nothing can protect you. It starts and it ends from the battle of ideas. If both parties are socialist, we need to run a guerrilla warfare in a different field, in the field of ideas, on social media, on institutions, putting pressures on institutions like what our what some common friends did with living heritage. This is the type of stuff that you can do. But there is no magical formula where the whole culture is completely alien to the idea of freedom, and somehow you can save yourself. Your culture from what is coming. There is no such hack.
Yeah, and as Nikos says, the courts are just products of ideas. So they can slow things down in the US because they have lifetime appointments and they can stay there for a long time, but they can't prevent it. They can just slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Raphael says, will I see both of you in Porto next year? It's time for Nikos to meet the real hardcore European objectivists of Portugal.
Yes, you will. We will be in Porto in I think the second week of April or something like that. This is
April
where
17th, something like that. 17th, 18th, yeah.
17th, 18th, something like that. This is where our annual European conference will be. So looking forward to Porto, a town very meaningful for all Greeks because this is where we won the semi-final of Euro 2004 against Czech Republic. So Porto is in our hearts.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know it had that historical significance. I thought maybe ancient Greece had established some kind of outpost there.
No.
No, because they
did. I'm
did
sure they did at some point. They definitely went to Marseille, to the French coast.
No, they also went
as
up
far as we got,
the Atlantic coast of Spain. They were on that side.
Oh,
of,
okay.
So I do know that, but I don't know if they went as north as Porto, but they definitely were in the region. Yeah, you guys should come. Nikos will be there. I will be
Yep.
there. I think Onkar is going to join us, and
Onkar, Ben, and Tal.
I think Ben is not coming, but Tal is going to be there.
Okay.
And yeah, it's going to be, and the Portuguese are really cool.
And Aaron Smith. Aaron Smith is also part of the team. Very, very cool guy. That's why I'm mentioning him.
I don't think Aaron's going to be there, and I don't think Ben's going to be there. But maybe I'm wrong. Um, you'll have to check. I think it's only the four of us, but
Okay.
we'll see. But anyway, it's going to be cool no matter what. So
Well, we managed to have a very cool conference in Australia
Just
when
the
it
two
was
of us.
just three of us,
Three of us.
me, you, Jonathan, plus Haley. So we
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
run a good conference even with 3-4 people.
Absolutely. I keep telling them just leave the world to Nikos and me. You can have the US. We'll take the world, and everything will be good. But yeah, you guys should come again. If you go to aynrand.org/start here, you can find a link there to information about the conference. I think the discount code might even apply for that, for those of you who do not qualify for scholarship. I'm not sure if they're still taking scholarships. I think they are. So you should.
Oh yeah, they definitely are. Yeah, I mean,
Still taking
don't
scholarships.
quote me on this, but I think they are. Yes.
So if you're under 34, I think it is, i.e., young,
Or
you
if you
can
are
apply.
young at heart, like if you are 34 and 11 months and you have a good reason, we'll
There
figure
you go.
something out perhaps.
So apply for scholarship. We'd love to see you. It's going to be Porto's a beautiful city, and again, the Portuguese are amazing, and it's a nice hotel. It's going to be a good conference. Good conference. So look forward to seeing Raphael again there. All right, Shazbot, $50. Thank you, Shazbot. If a corporation did establish a moon colony, what are the chances that it would be more capitalist than any Earth country, especially after it became self-supporting?
It depends on who. I mean, look. Okay, you would hope that. Okay, I'm gonna do some Marxism here, right? Like the economic determinism. You would expect that if someone has a brilliant mind to establish this colony, he also has brilliant ideas about economics. But let me remind you that Einstein wrote an article called Why Socialism? So Einstein, one of the highest IQ people to ever live, he was a socialist. So the fact that you have a brilliant mind in science and even in technology doesn't guarantee that you're going to have the good ideas. We are not Marxists.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But if you want to be inspired by what is possible on Mars, read The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert Heinlein, which is a fun book. It actually has a Randian character, a so-called objectivist, in it. And Heinlein generally has kind of a positive view of what happens in the once we reach the stars. And you keep having to move from star to star because once civilization reaches everywhere, it becomes collectivist. But you can keep moving. That's the beauty of science fiction. You can keep going further away. It's not like the Earth, which is, where are you going to go? We're stuck. All right. Neo, did you read Heinlein?
I started reading it to do my objectivist duty. I can't get into science fiction. It's I cannot put myself into that world. So
Okay.
I got confused, to be honest. Like, who is who? Where do they come from? What's the relation?
Which novel did you try? Which one did you try?
The moon is a harsh mistress.
Yeah. I reread it years afterwards. I read it in my 20s and then I reread it. And it doesn't really have a plot. It's not very good. My favorite is Time Enough for Love. Time Enough for Love is my favorite.
I've read a libertarian science fiction where there's some libertarian guerrillas, which has a weird name, but I can't remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neo, has the October 7th war strengthened religion in Israel? Many Israeli YouTubers I watch, once atheists, say they become more religious, a way to unite the population.
That's for you.
I mean, I don't know. The truth is, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it affected people both ways. that it made some people more religious and made other people less religious. I don't understand how you can have an October 7th and then become more religious. Like, now I really believe in God because he's such a good guy. I mean, shouldn't you really be pissed off at God after an October 7th? But the same thing happened during the Holocaust. So after the Holocaust, survivors, many of them became less religious, became atheists, but many also became religious, more religious. So it affects, it depends on your psychology. It affects people in different ways. There is an element of, we need something to unite us as a country. I mean, people think Israel is all these Jews and therefore it's ethnocentric or collective, but all these Jews are just a bunch of individuals, and they don't have the vocabulary to say that they're fighting for freedom, sadly. They don't have the philosophy. So they might look to religion to unite them. But I haven't seen any data, and we'd have to ask Boaz. I haven't seen any data to suggest that it's overwhelmingly in one direction or another. I mean, my family's all secular. I don't think any of them have become more religious post October 7th. Ian Meerkat says, Tucker Carlson, I think, is the Toohey of the right.
Well, Toohey was too
Gives him too
serious.
much credit. Yeah.
Yeah, Toohey had the plan.
Yeah.
Toohey was a very talented, evil mastermind. I don't think Tucker is. If he was like that, he wouldn't be bringing you the random guy who said, I had a drug-infused, homeless, homosexual sex with Obama. Like he would do something better than that.
All right. Not Your Average Algorithm says, yeah, you shouldn't ask these kind of questions. Nikos, can you speak to the AOI High Command to make sure Yaron is on the stage with Steven Pinker at Ocon?
You are talking to the chairman of the board of ARI, and I'm gonna talk to ARI to put Yaron on stage. Why? By the way, are you not on stage with Pinker?
I have no idea. Nobody's spoken to me. I'm not the high command, so the people who make decisions don't ask me about it. So
okay, I appreciate the contribution to the show. So if I get the chance, I'll ask.
Yeah, I have no idea who is. It's going to be an interesting panel or whatever it is with Steven Pinker, and I hope Onkar's on there. That I can say.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, you and Onkar would be the obvious choice. Yeah.
Right. I think that would be fun.
That was also the plan for the Peterson panel in 2018.
And somebody overruled somebody.
Oh no, I mean I wasn't in the
Onkar wasn't on. Onkar wasn't on.
Yeah, but he wasn't on because he had something else to do or something, and it was Greg, I think.
Yep. I like numbers. When do you think racists were more intellectual?
Racists were more intellectual when they viewed racism as a science, first of all. So they viewed themselves as following the progress of science. And again, I mean, go read. I mean, don't go read, but if you want, go read American Renaissance, let's say the official portal of white nationalists, and compare them with the Nick Fuentes rants, and you'll see that the one has at least the ambition of presenting an intellectual view.
Yeah, and the think about the South during slavery. They were super. I mean, they wrote books and essays and philosophical justification. Were very influenced by Hegel, and this was not a. I mean, it's all a rationalization, right? But they offered an attempt at an intellectual defense of their racism. What kind of intellectual defense do you get from these guys today?
Yeah, I mean, even if you go and rewatch Pat Buchanan's famous Culture War speech, I mean, you compare it with anyone from CPAC or Amfest or I mean, there's no comparison.
Yeah. Rock. says, does China have an advantage over America by not worrying about wasting time or resources on the demands of morons? Woke religion, fantasy, socialism, the whole thing. Do they
Yeah,
have an
they do
advantage?
have an advantage on that, but they have a disadvantage that at the end of the day, they're a state-run economy. So it's not an advantage, it's just cutting some of the disadvantages. Or put differently, the West is imposing disadvantages on itself that it should be ages ahead of China, and it's not because of all these things that you mentioned.
Yeah. Rock continues on the China theme. Could you argue that the US is nearly as corrupt as China? While China is more realistic, US politicians are true believers or wannabe central planners restrained only by the Constitution.
Yeah, first of all, you can't say that. B, you can't say almost anything in China because I doubt whether there's a handful of people in the world who can, and I'm definitely not one of them, who can understand what is happening in China. So, you think China has this thing that looks like a free economy. Actually, most of the enterprises in China are controlled by the Chinese Communist Party or people close to the Chinese Communist Party. So, for what it's worth, I think we are overhyping China. And I know this because we did the same thing with Soviet Union. So I wouldn't be surprised if China is a giant, like a paper tiger in economic terms, more than we'd expect.
Yeah, I mean the difference is China has skyscrapers and the Soviets didn't, but and it has tech. But yes, I think we overhyped China. There's no question. Um, Roland says, I like this new tradition of having Nikos on before the new year. Thank you, Roland. We'll make
Good.
it happen. Um, Andrew, what set of experiences made Nikos seriously question his former political collectivism?
Mostly reality, to be honest with you, my friend. And so, first of all, taking seriously Marx's labor theory of value and not being able to see it in real life. But a big thing was the financial crisis in Greece. I tried to apply the Marxist schemes to explain the crisis in Greece, and it was absolutely impossible. So you had a system that made sense as a closed system, as long as you don't try to apply it to the real world. So it was a rationalization, as we would say today, something that is not connected to reality. So this is where I started questioning Marxism, when it couldn't explain life, and also when I realized that my former comrades were not really interested on progress. So I was very big on progress, what today you'd call, I don't know, transhumanism, quote unquote. And I realized these people, they find it too much even if you didn't recycle. So I thought, I'm on the wrong train here.
All right, let's see. Christian, great discussion of two great thinkers, off topic, but who will win the Champions League next year? I would put my money on the Gunners.
Okay, the Arsenal. So this Gunners is Arsenal. So Arsenal I think they have more chance of winning the Champions League than the Premier League because they're this team that they're excellent in not conceding goals and winning one goal. And usually this type of teams can do better in competitions with a lot of knockouts. Now, every second that this discussion goes on, American viewers are dropping off because they don't probably understand even about what sport that we're talking about. So yes, I think it's more possible that Arsenal wins the Champions League than the Premier League.
But who do you think will win the Champions League?
You can never tell who's going to win the Champions League because as opposed to the NBA, which has series, Champions League is either knockout games of two or the final is a single game. So a lot has to do with luck. So last year, the best team won the Champions League, which was Paris Saint-Germain. Quite often, the best team does not win the Champions League because so much has to do with timing, luck, injuries. Otherwise, Manchester City of Pep Guardiola would win the Champions League basically every year, but it only happened once.
Cook says Detroit basketball with lots of exclamation points.
Yeah, very good for the regular season. I don't think it's going to go far in the playoffs. Having said that, the East this year is very open. So actually, no, now that I think about it, yeah, who's going to stop them in the East? Yeah, maybe. But Don't overhype teams in the regular season.
So who wins the NBA championship?
I don't know, someone from the West. I will never bet against Jokic. So yeah, Balkan power.
The Denver. Okay. Molten Splendor. Who currently in power in the US would you consider a fascist, or who is currently working to create a fascist state in the US?
Well, no one is working to create a fascist state, but there's no question that there are many people in the American right who have a vision that the state should have more power. Now, is it going to be fascism? No. Are they dangerous? Yes. So, yeah, I would say J.D. Vance he would be happy with more power. Let's put it this way, and he has the intellectual entourage to dress it intellectually, whereas Trump is more of an instinctive authoritarian, but not someone who can dress it intellectually.
Kim, should one even try to debate commies and socialists in the wild? If yes, what are good strategies or things to address?
So would it be worth doing? It depends who is the audience. So it's gonna be hard on you. It's gonna be unpleasant for you. If you think it's worth it, and there's some people in the audience who are, but mostly
I think
this
in
is
the
for.
wild. I think she's implying that in the wild means not in front of an audience. I mean, just as a normal human being, would you
Oh,
go?
no, no, no. Unless if you want to learn something. Unless if you want to learn something. So there used to be in the past that I knew someone who was a white nationalist, and we were in the same circles in a, let's say, how to put it, sports training environment. And, someone would say, oh, you shouldn't sanction. But he was literally the first person I knew from that movement. So I was very curious to like, okay, what do these people actually believe? And it was very interesting. You realize that some of the things that you think, oh, they would never believe them, they actually believe them. But the point was not to debate them to prove them wrong. The point was to see out of intellectual interest, what do they truly believe? Now, this is very specific. This is something that has to do with my job. So I think for the average person, no, it's not worth it.
Yep. Thank you, Kim. Christian, concerning the populist left in Germany, Nikos must pay attention to Sarah Wagenknecht.
Yeah, the left in Germany, the populist left, did better in the last elections, but yeah, we will have to.
I think she was disappointing, right? I mean, I think they expected her to do much better than she really did.
Well, she did better than what they would expect from the Linke back in the day. But again, the left in Germany is too specific. You also have the Green Party, which has become way more institutionalized. So I'll say the same thing I said about the Detroit Pistons. Let's wait and see. It's too premature.
Roland says, I think the left likes to see homeless in American cities because they can point their fingers and say, see, capitalism bad.
Oh yeah, I can definitely verify this. This was my psychology as a leftist. It was and it was very nihilistic and envious. I'm not proud of it, but it was true.
Huda Baba. Is that a Quincode poem on the wall behind Nikos? No
Yes,
sea
it
was
is.
ever sailed. It's called with
Ye-
a picture of a sailing ship.
Yes, so the history of this is I read this poem at the darkest dark of the first lockdown when the Corders were also doing their civil disobedience against the lockdowns. So I communicated to them my admiration. We were also back then in the same, we would meet through the Ayn Rand Center UK programs. So Linda Corder very kindly tried to post this in Greece because we are basically a third world country. They returned it to her. So she gave it to me in person last Ocon, and I'm very thankful
Nice.
to both the Corders.
Nice.
It's a very beautiful poem, and it's very nice to have in my house.
Good. Matt says, why do Putin Orthodox Christians like Dostoevsky?
That's a question for you. I think you've explained it as it captures the darkness and the malevolent premise of Russian literature. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know much, and I wouldn't even trust that these people can enjoy anything. Like, think someone like Dugin. Do you think he truly enjoys anything? So I think we give them too much credit if we think they enjoy Dostoevsky. Probably they like to name drop him. And by the way, Dostoevsky was very popular among many early fascists. I don't know, but I don't know why. So I haven't
Well,
got
I
a
mean,
good answer.
it's a rejection. I mean, he basically says that without authority and in a sense religious authority, you have anarchy, right? And anarchy is a negative, not as a positive. You have nihilism. So the only alternative to Christianity is nihilism, and just fill in authoritarian commandment-based system instead of Christianity. So anybody who's got an authoritarian bent, I think, is going to intellectually, that's not, let's say, like the literature, but intellectually appreciate Dostoevsky.
Yeah,
Right?
maybe it's that much quoted line. If God doesn't exist, everything is permitted. So it's what you said. Without God, without authority, there's anarchy.
And he concretizes it well, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he gives us a psychology of somebody who stops believing in God and is a nihilist. So he really concretizes it, makes it real.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Silvano says, Stranger in a Strange Land is my choice for headline. Hi, Yaron and Nikos. I didn't I mean, I liked the book. I enjoyed it when I read it a long, long, long time ago. But I have to say, I enjoyed some of his other books more. It's a weird book, Stranger in a Strange Land. And I'm sure if I read it today, I think it was even weirder. Pow Crash Bang. How would an objectivist society handle warfare? Doesn't fighting as a soldier require some kind of altruism?
Well, okay. This is I mean, the obvious example I give there is, let's say you are the Kurds and you are fighting ISIS. So the prospect is either I live as a slave to some medieval sadists, or I die, or someone stands up to them with a very real, possibility that you die. In that case, it's not really a sacrifice. It's just that the prospect of dying is better than living under these beasts. Now, the army, and particularly the special corps of the army, have something which is also appealing, that you can try to be your best self, that you have the pride of defending the values that are important to you. So I can totally imagine people joining, and people are joining and have joined forever, professional army or the special forces in the army, with a, put it this way, selfish motivation, which is, let me see my limits, let me see how my life will be. And actually, I didn't go to the army. I was drafted to the army and I joined despite my will, actually. So I wouldn't say that I would want people to experience what I experienced, but in retrospect, the army and joining a special corps were very good for me, because it was the first time in my life that I felt pride that I actually did something. So obviously, this is not to say it's in favor of the draft, but in retrospect, I could see good reasons why someone would want to go through this voluntarily for very quote unquote selfish reasons.
Yes, I agree with what Nico said. I mean, the point is that people who go fight in the military, I mean, it could be as extreme as an example of the Kurds and ISIS, but it could be that you want your children and your family, the people close to you, the people important to you, and you yourself, to be free from, the risk of being murdered by terrorists, or October 7th happening to you, right? If you're in Israel. I mean, Israelis volunteered like crazy to go fight after October 7th. Why? Because they understood the existential nature of it. So I think many Israelis who were very skeptical about the army and didn't really want to go, and October 7th really changed them because they suddenly, it concretized to them in a really horrific way what they were fighting for. They were fighting for their lives. Now, one of the things you get when you have a free country is, and you have an objectivist society is, that when there's a war that is indeed sacrificial, you're going to get people resisting going to fight for it. So imagine World War I in America without a draft and with a more rational society. People would go, why am I going to Europe to die in the trenches? For who? For the British or the Germans? Who cares? There are no good guys, there are no bad guys here. Well, what's the point? So nobody would volunteer. And if taxation was voluntary, nobody would pay extra taxes to go to war. And America could never join the war because there'd never be enough support to join it. So an objectivist society you only go to war when it's essential to go to war, which means only when you're truly fighting for the protection of the individual rights of the people. And people would be willing to fight such wars because of what you're fighting for.
And on a psychological level, our friends would think how many people freely go and become, for example, mixed martial artists, which is a brutal endeavor. So many people want this adrenaline and this
Absolutely
type of life. So they would do it also voluntarily for the army.
Yep, I think that's right. Iconivore, something like that. Yaron, let's really impress Nikos. I don't know if it'll impress him or insult him. All right, I'm going to take a shot at this. Sotirakopoulos.
No, 60% right.
Yeah,
so
well,
it's very simple.
He spelled it out for me. He spelled it out phonetically.
It's very simple. You read every syllable as you read it. You pronounce it as you read it.
Sotirakopoulos.
Yeah, no, poulos. You read
Poulos.
what you see. It's not one of these like East European. It's actually very easy to pronounce, much easier than you'd think.
I don't think when I learned to read, I learned using phonics.
Well, okay, maybe that's.
I think that's a
to
problem.
my European mind, it's very simple and easy. So
yeah. All right. How crash bang? How are people in dreary menial jobs? Okay, I guess he's new to objectivism and trying to understand. Okay. How are people in dreary menial jobs supposed to find fulfillment in their career? Garbage collectors and janitors, for example, how can their job provide a robust central purpose and happiness?
Okay, so I've literally, again, and I don't want to be one of these, I've literally been a garbage collector, but I've literally been a garbage collector. And let me tell you something. It was a job I held for a few months while I was doing my PhD. And here's how it gave me meaning. It was the first time in my life that I made, quote, good money. So this was a time where there was a crisis in Greece and it was a job in the university that no one wanted, so therefore it paid well. So you find meaning, first of all, because you support yourself. And second, you're not going to have this, odds are you're not going to have this job for the rest of your life. You use this job and you do it as best as you can because you get pride. I mean, I got pride when it was Sunday morning after a night which was an absolute mess at the club. Imagine now a university nightclub. And then after you're there for 2 hours, it's again clean. So any job that you do it well give you some form of pride. But also, you're not going to do it for the rest of your life. You do it well, and then you go on.
But some people are going to do it for the rest of their lives, right? Some people have limited ability. And this
but still, I mean, I use always the example of there's a lady cleaner that my family, we've been using her for ages. Yep. I think she's like the LeBron James of cleaners. She cleans so efficiently and quickly, and she's in such high demand that I have to book her like weeks in advance. And she takes pride in it. She's very good. I don't know how she do it. She doesn't take breaks. She doesn't check her phone. She's a productivity, people have things to learn from her. And she's proud about this. And she has other hobbies also, so it's not that her horizons are low, but she's good at it. She's okay with it, and she tries to give more time to her family. So she wasn't interested in doing a different profession. Also, she was an immigrant. So, but there's nothing wrong with it and nothing demeaning in it. She does at her best of her ability. She's very good at it. She's proud on it, and there's no problem with it.
Yeah, and you can find ways to improve, to do it better, to challenge yourself, even in the most menial jobs. You can do that, and a lot of times they're happier than people who have sophisticated jobs. Andrew, do you see any signs of a rational left contingent forming that is open to being more pro-free markets?
Yes, as long as it's not part of the left. So the only good thing that came out of the debacle of the left after October 7 is how many people realize that what do I have to do with this freak show? So these people can be more open to our message, and as long as they, as long as they are now in search of a new intellectual alliance, we can, we can have discussions with them at least.
Carl, Nikos, has religion had any influence in your life during your teenage years or before your 20s?
Yeah, very, very little impact. It had a huge cultural impact. So the reason I was so much anti-West is because in Greece, being anti-West has to do not only with the anti-capitalism of the left, but also with the anti-Western sentiment of the Orthodox Church. So always Western influences, American influences were viewed with suspicion. So maybe this is the only way it had an impact. And also, it had the impact that the altruism of the left, I was getting the thumbs up even from religious people. So there was never a doubt that even though I was a radical leftist, I was part of the good guys. Even my political enemies would tell me so because I was still an altruist.
Interesting. All right, Lucinda says, what are some of your favorite non-Rand fiction books?
Non-Rand fiction books.
Favorites.
Okay, so growing up, it was Jules Verne, particularly 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yep.
I view it as almost a Randian ethos of a book because you have a man of the mind declaring a revolt against the rest of the world. That's Captain Nemo, by the way. Well, I love Sane. I consider Sane, the cowboy, the best encapsulation of the best concretization of this notion of virtue and masculinity, or however you want to put it. I recently read Count of Monte Cristo. I finished it. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Obviously, more light reading Agatha Christie. And I go through phases. I liked Milan Kundera for many years. Now, what else? It's... That's the first things that come to mind. Yeah, I would say throughout my life, Jules Verne, so things with a positive vision.
Do you read Karl May?
Who?
Karl May, M-A-Y.
Name a couple of books.
I can't. They were Westerns.
Oh no, okay, yeah, I've read some Westerns, but I don't remember titles. Oh, and also I like.
So the famous thing about him is that he was Hitler's favorite author.
I tried to find some German romantics who were the favorite of Himmler, because I told you I want to immerse myself. Yeah. It's difficult to find them, even in Amazon. They're basically.
So you know what's funny about Karl May? He was Hitler's favorite author. All his books were translated to Hebrew. I read all of them when I was a teenager, right? It was hugely popular in Israel. And only one or two of them were ever translated into English. It's almost impossible to find any of his books. But in Hebrew, you can find them all.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So as I said earlier, I try to read fiction that helps me also understand non-fiction. So German romanticism, like medieval stories, that type of stuff is another area where I jumped into. I
All
even
right.
read that book that gave rise to the birth of the nation and white supremacism, The Klansman.
Okay.
And yeah, not something particularly interesting, even as propaganda. So
Yeah.
yeah, anyway.
Okay, we got two last questions, I think. Linda says, I recommend The Martian Way by Isaac Asimov.
I had this as a kid. I never read it. Isaac Asimov is quite popular in Greece.
Yep. Yeah, I read some of his books when I was a kid. Andrew says, is Nikos optimistic about the future trajectory of the influence of objectivist movements on the culture? There's a closing question for you.
Okay, so the question I always have is, why are we, I think we should be angrier for the fact that we don't have the impact that we should have. So I always try to wonder, why is Stoicism, for example, having such a cultural appeal, whereas we don't? Why does Jordan Peterson have a bigger audience than Yaron? So the answer is yes, we should at least be willing to have the aspiration to have much more. That's where it will start. It will start by us becoming angry that we don't have this impact.
All right. And what do we do with that anger? What happens then?
Well, we try to find ways to make it more relevant. We don't become complacent. We learn from other people. So, for example, I try to understand, what does Ryan Holiday do to make Stoicism a thing. We try to see what other movements are doing. So, for example, I read with a lot of interest the biography of Malcolm X.
Yeah.
It was horrific intellectually, like one of the most racist books I've ever read in my life. At the same time, this guy was basically a movement by himself. So I try to learn and get ideas even from bad movements. The problem is that bad movements usually appeal to different things than the ones that we appeal. So let's say there's not much we can learn, let's say, from fascism, although fascism was a machine of political propaganda, because we appeal to different things than what the fascist or Malcolm X was appealing. But at least it's worth trying to understand how movements become successful.
I mean, the one positive movement worth reading is the Enlightenment, is to try to figure out what they did in the Enlightenment that had the kind of profound impact that it did. It's much subtler. There's no leader. There's no one guy that, does it all, but it's probably how we will change the world rather than how because the negative movements are often around one person, somebody with charisma and ideas and a marketing ability.
Yeah, but to use that line from Knight Rider, one man can make a difference. And again, see what happened with Millet. We don't know what's going to be the trajectory of the country, but it's worth trying. And again, I'm talking to the person who did more as one person to spread this idea. So I think you understand very well what one person can do.
Yes, I'd still like to have as big an audience as Jordan Peterson. I've been angry, so I've done that. All right, Lone Dissenter says Ayn Rand was the most persuasive objectivist, obviously. So what can we learn from her? A good question.
Well, it's not much we can learn because she operated at a level which is different for us to operate.
Yeah.
Having said that, I don't think she was a particular, she didn't aspire to be a great public speaker or a great, that was not her thing, like reaching the masses through other means rather than her book or her philosophy. That was not her work. So it's like, you start playing basketball and you wonder, what can I learn from Michael Jordan? Well, not much. It's not, start with more realistic role models.
Yeah, and Ayn Rand was an artist, and that also differentiates her. We're not artists. I'm not going to write a novel. Nikos is not going to produce a great painting, and so we operate on just one of the dimensions that Ayn Rand operated on. She was very multidimensional, and it's really her art that elevated her and made her as popular and as big as she was. We're leveraging her art in order to be successful.
And what a privilege it is. Again, let's finish with
Absolutely.
this, right? That as a movement, we're very, very lucky that we have this vision, and this can be so inspiring to so many people. So let's make good use of it.
Absolutely. All right. Always a pleasure, Nikos. Thank you.
Thank you, Yaron.
I will see you in Porto. I don't know
And
if I'll see
before
you
then
before that.
in Zoom. But yeah, see you all important. Just to remind people, the course, ARI live courses, find that course with you'll see Mussolini and Hitler. And if you want to give me a follow on Twitter and YouTube, that would
That's
also be
right.
appreciated.
Yeah, Nikos has a great Twitter feed. He really does good tweets. So check him out on Twitter and follow him there. And yes, check out ARI Live and in particular Nikos's course. I'm also teaching a course next semester on ARI Live, but check it out and take advantage of the discount and sign up and have a happy new year, everybody. Happy. Well, I'll see you guys tomorrow and Wednesday. We've got the big show on Wednesday. Raising tons of money. But you, Nikos, have a great new year, and I will see you in Porto.
Thank
Bye,
you very
everybody.
much.